For those of you I haven't met, I'm Carolyn Ray, the CEO of JourneyWoman. For those that might be new to JourneyWoman, we are the original solo women's travel publication founded in 1994. Our ethos is to empower women to travel safely and well by providing practical travel tips by women for women based on our own firsthand experience. So this webinar is just one of the things we do to inspire women. We also have regular emails that I hope you're all signed up for with travel tips and stories. We have a private Facebook group. We have community calls every 2 weeks. We have a book club. And we just had, for the first time, which was a dream come true for me, our first meetups in Toronto, where I actually got to meet some of the women that I've been meeting virtually for the last 2 years. So it was just fabulous. And we also had one in Edmonton, and then we've got some more coming all around the world. We also support women entrepreneurs and small businesses by promoting women-friendly tours, retreats, guides, and accommodations on our website. So if you're looking for a women-friendly tour, please do visit our site and help us support these women. They have worked so hard to provide you with safe, women-friendly experiences. And of course, we're also hosting our first ever retreat in October called Women's Travel Wisdom to help women connect and heal from the pandemic and travel with intention. And we'll talk more about it at the end of our session tonight. I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement, as we do with all of our sessions. At JourneyWoman, we strive to be a place where we all feel welcome. We are committed to creating the safest place possible with the intention of helping to unearth the true value of each person who joins this community. We wish to acknowledge that the land we are standing on today is the traditional territory of many nations, and we wish to acknowledge and thank the First Peoples of this territory and other Indigenous peoples for sharing this land with us in order for us to continue our work today. So today is a very exciting day for me because I have admired Loung from afar for a long time, and it's just a joy to speak with you and have you with us today. We have a lot to talk about, but I just want to do a quick intro for you. For those of you who may not have read my many emails on this, Loung was just 5 years old when the Khmer Rouge army invaded her country in April 1975, forcing her family to flee their home. She was trained as a child soldier. Her siblings were sent to labor camps, and those who survived the horrors were not reunited until the Khmer Rouge was destroyed. She shares her story in the book, First They Killed My Father, A Daughter of Cambodia Remembers, and co-wrote the screenplay for the Netflix original movie directed by Angelina Jolie in 2017. A lifelong activist, Loung works to stop violence against women and the use of child soldiers and eradicate landmines globally. In 1995, she made her first trip back to Cambodia and has returned on over 40 trips, which we're going to talk about tonight, devoting herself to helping her native land heal from the traumas of war. And you can read more on the article on my site called The Pandemic's Impact on Women. Loung gives hundreds of keynote addresses at numerous forums in the US and around the world, and tonight she's spending time with us in anticipation of our closing keynote, A Call to Action for Women at our Women's Travel Wisdom Retreat in October 2022. So Loung, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. Despite your technology problems, you're here, thank you.
Well, I'm so glad to be here, and it's been so wonderful, Carolyn, to get to know you and to talk to you. I also admire you tremendously, and I know we have a shared passion for traveling and for solo traveling and for many other things, love of the land, love of culture, love of history. It's been such a privilege that I've had quite a few conversations with you now. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, and it's wonderful to be here.
So we wanted to start tonight talking a little bit about your story and having you share some of your story, starting with the movie First They Killed My Father. How does it feel now when you look back on that, and do you see yourself as the same person you were then or someone different?
In Cambodia, we have a saying, same, but different. And there are many things that I'm grateful to continued to stay the same for me, which is the fact that I was very resilient. I was and am still tough and family oriented, and my family and my love for my family is my world. And also my love for adventures and as a seeker and as a curious person. First and foremost, I think of so many things that I possess to this day is my sense of curiosity. With that said, I am also very grateful to be different. I am grateful to be not filled with rage and anger and hurt. I am grateful that my heart's no longer so scarred and wounded that it would have problems beating in a healthy, happy, grateful way. So I'm glad that part of me is no longer with me. That when I do feel anger, when I do feel rage, it's directed at the injustices that's happening in our world, what is in Cambodia, in Rwanda, in Bosnia, in Ukraine, and not directed at myself or at my mother for sending me away when I was young. And that it's a healthier direction of anger and rage as opposed to an inward direction that was much more damaging to me.
Yeah, wow. And I watched your movie again last night for the second or third time. And I was just, it's just amazing talking to you. And I have to ask you, how did you have the courage to tell this story and to find your voice, especially when through that whole situation you were, you had to blend in and you had to be invisible and you had to be silent to survive?
It's a privilege to grow to be this age for me. My mother was killed when she was 39 and my father was 42. It's an incredible privilege and luxury in a lot of ways to actually live a long life and hopefully a few more years of life. And I mention this because finding your voice, finding your purpose, finding your journey, finding your love takes time. Mm-hmm. It takes intention, it takes dedication, and that all requires us to have time to reflect, to look forward. So I am so grateful, first and foremost, that I got to live to be this age, to have the time. And secondly, that in my living, I was privileged enough to surround myself with wonderful, supportive, graceful, compassionate, kind people who support me and who I support. And what a gift this is, that to fill your life with not hate and anger, but with love and kindness. That is also a privilege for many. And so for myself, for me, it is life, like travel, is not a destination, but a journey, a wonderful journey. And I think for me, it's also the basis of wanting to find my voice, was that I know what it felt like to not have a voice. And so I am constantly seeking, I'm constantly wanting to not just find my own voice, but to assist others to find theirs.
Yeah,
We are so powerful when we can speak. We are exponentially more powerful when we can speak together. And I believe that when we can do that, we can absolutely create change in our community, in our world. But we first of all have to be able to speak together.
Yeah. And how did you take that first step forward to kind of bring all those memories forward and start writing them down? What was that like for you to create a practice, or what kinds of things did you do to kind of get that moving?
Well, for me, it wasn't a choice as much as I needed it, because I needed therapy. Mm-hmm. After having gone through the Khmer Rouge genocide, where in a span of 4 years, 3 years, 8 months, and 21 days, the Khmer Rouge, the communist Khmer Rouge that took over my country, by the time they left, by the time they were defeated, when I was 9, an estimated of 1.7 to 2.2 million Cambodians would die from starvation, disease, hard labor, and execution. And so over a quarter of the population were killed. And so for me, even when I wanted to forget, I was not able to forget. Mm-hmm. Just because the guns had fallen silent when I came to America did not mean the war left me, left my heart, left my scars, and it did not leave scars. So for me, it meant I had to find a way to get the war out. And I wrote. Before I could speak English, before I could, even when I learned to speak English, before I could find the words to tell people my feelings, because as we all know, we women especially, we are natural communicators, I think. Even when we don't know the words, our bodies felt things, our bodies remember things, our bodies know things. And for me, writing was a way to translate what my body and my mind, my heart knew onto the pages. And that included writing down the rage and the angers and the tears and the loves and life that I did not want to forget. And yet it was too painful to remember. So writing in my journals, in my diaries, was my first step toward reclaiming my voice. And it would take many years before that, after that, when I would turn the pages of my journals into my books.
Maybe you could share a bit of the story of when you left Cambodia and what that was like.
I was 5 when the Khmer Rouge soldiers came into my city. And they came with their lies, they came with their guns, they came with their horrors, they came with their genocide. And for the next 4 years, my life would become so stranger than fiction and so full of anger and hurt and suffering. And I share this because it was also filled with lies that I did not know were lies. For example, when my father was taken from my family, my mother gathered my siblings and I together and said to each of us, and we were all little kids, we were all just 12 and under, said to my siblings and I, you must leave me. You go north, you go south, you walk east, you go west, take a different names and tell them I am dead already. Mm-hmm. When I didn't want to leave, she turned me by my shoulder and pushed me out and said, get out. For decades, for over 15 years, when I was 8 years old and by the time I became an adult, I thought my mother was weak. I thought my mother didn't love me. I thought she abandoned me. I thought my father kept us together. I left Cambodia when I was 10 years old with this rage and with this anger. And every time there was a loss or suffering or tears to be cried, I always had my sister do with me, my best friend, my kindred spirit. And so I was never alone, except when I had to leave her in Cambodia. And she was always she was always the person who balanced me and the person who would tell me the truth. I eventually, with my oldest brother, myself, and his wife, made our ways to Thailand, where there was a refugee camp. And then after that, 6 months after that, we came to America. So a year after the Khmer Rouge War ended, we arrived in America. And I arrived with all the heartaches and all the lies that was told to me of the strangers and the foreigners who wanted me hurt and harmed, the French, the Vietnamese, the Americans, the Chinese, people who were not like us. People I was told that should I see them, should I cross their paths, they would want to harm me. And in order for me to survive, I would have to harm them first. This is why I travel. This is why I love to travel.
So let's go into that, because this is, my heart hurts listening to you right now. We have talked a lot about travel, and thank you for sharing all that too, Loung. And how that's opened, how travel can take off your filters and open you to new perspectives, some of which you're talking about now. What have you learned from travel? What has been some of the lessons and the values and the things that you've learned from your travels?
I'm going to read a quote that I loved so much, and it's by Maya Angelou. She said, in which she wrote, "Perhaps travel cannot prevent bigotry, but by demonstrating that all peoples cry, laugh, eat, worry, and die, it can introduce the ideas that if we try to understand each other, we may even become friends." That's what I want. Because I was raised and I was trained for 4 years of my life at a time when my mind was very much vulnerable, when my heart was very much scared, when my family was taken from me. I was trained to believe that there was so much hurt and hate and unkindness in our world. And I believed that when I first came to America, I would meet my American friends. And when they extended their hands to shake mine, I was constantly afraid that they might be holding a knife behind their back. I was constantly afraid that when I met kind people, that they were talking and whispering amongst themselves behind my back that indeed I was broken. Indeed, I was a child of war. Indeed, I was not going to benefit our society, but become a burden on our society. I wanted to travel because I wanted to dispel those myths. And for me, when you travel, you get to know not just what they do and the people they are, but you get to see the grace and kindness of people, and the smiles and the hellos and the welcomings of people in different lands wanting to show us the best of what they have on their land.
Exactly. It's interesting. We just had a call last Friday about the biases in travel and how the only way to find out sometimes is to get out there and find out for yourself. Take that first step. What about, we talked a little bit about being mindful when you travel and being able to be in the moment when you travel, and all those things that help you have a deeper and richer experience.
Yeah. And being mindful is very important in life in general, for me especially. I think I know people who are very intrinsically lovely, who just seem to emanate light, and who just seems to embody this and live it. I have to work a little bit more for that. I have to work a little harder to stay calm, to be mindful, to be aware, to be kind and compassionate. All these things do not come easily for me or naturally sometimes. But and so for me, and when I travel, I have to be mindful of how I need to take care of myself. It's a wonderful thing about traveling. I remember my first trip when I went to Thailand, China, and Cambodia on a solo trip by myself. And on that trip, I just knew, I learned I could take care of myself. I learned that in order to travel well, I needed to pack light. I needed to pack what I could carry, because in Thailand and in China and Cambodia, they have river taxis, they have cow wagons, they have modes of transportations that don't always come to a complete stop for you to get on. Sometimes you have to jump, sometimes you have to run, sometimes you have to chase after things. And so I learned how to be aware, I learned how to look, I learned how to be mindful of how I travel and how I hold myself. I also learned to be mindful of my senses, my 5 senses, of the sense of taste and touch and smell and sight, and my 6th sense of my intuition and whether it's a goddess for you or your divine spirit, to be aware of the things that's happening more in the netherworld that we may tap into when we travel, because our spirit is wild when we travel. I love that. I love being mindful of my wild spirit.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Home, thank you. I think we all, when I travel, I love seeing that in other women. I love seeing the wildness of our spirit taking wings, because here we are at home. We can just live on 2 or 3 senses and we're fine. And life is somewhat known, but when you are traveling, there's a wildness to all of us that is new, that is exciting, that is sensual, and that is sexy even. I really love all of that.
It's a great segue into the next question I wanted to ask you, which is about the impact of the pandemic on us. And what's happened to us as women, and, our isolation, our loss of connection, not being able to do all the things that we as travelers love to do and feel that freedom and that sense of adventure. What do you think the impact has been of the pandemic on women over the last few years?
And I believe that women we come into the world with a sense of intuition and intuitiveness that allows us to be authentic. When we were all authentic beings when we were little kids. All of us came into the world our authentic selves. We were precocious, we were clever, we were crying, we were fighters, we were designers. We all had these personalities when we were little kids and we were little girls. But then as we grow up, whether it's from community or books or televisions or news or the media that tells us everywhere we turn that women are imperfect in so many ways, whether it's our hair or our lack of hair or hair on our armpits or not on our armpits, that we are told in so many ways that we are imperfect. And all these voices crowd our heads, confuse our intuitions, mute out our intuitiveness. And for me, traveling is that freedom. And it's when we balance ourselves, when we are, again, become authentic. And when we're not traveling, we travel all the time, whether we travel to the school to drop off our kids, whether we travel to the grocery markets. Like women, we move forward. And I think when we're not able to go for weeks to have these traveling experiences, we have what I would call the 5 minutes magic moments. 5 minutes magic moments when you wave to a friend from across the aisle at the grocery store, when you meet up for 5 minutes at the movie theater and you talk about each other's families and love, when you're at the library and you're checking out a book and you're wondering what each other are reading. These 5 minutes of magic moments that were taken away from us during the pandemic. The pandemic isolated us from each other, but it also stole from us these 5 minute magic moments when we met, when we connect, when we congregate. And now it is our opportunities to take that back and also to meet up after the 5 minutes, meet for 5 days in Sacramento. Because we now can.
That's right. You have a beautiful story about connection with your sister that I would love you to share. And it really is what you're saying, those little small moments that we take for granted in our day and how meaningful they can be in our life. Would you mind sharing that story?
I would be happy to. And I have learned so much from returning to Cambodia. I've been to many other countries, and some people work to buy stuff. I work just so I can get out of town and be on the road. And so for me, the return into Cambodia have always been very special because my sister still lives there to this day. And I met up with her again when she was 27 and I was 25, and we had been separated for 15 years. And by then she had become a mother of 5 kids, given birth to her children in villages where there were no running water or no electricity. And I had studied abroad in the south of France. I had bought my Eurail pass that took me all of Europe, and I traveled to other places. And so I arrived in Cambodia with these beliefs and the sadness of judging my sister and looking at her and seeing what she didn't have, and seeing what I thought she was lacking in her life. And I brought her Godiva chocolate, which she didn't like. It was too sweet. I brought her to my hotel rooms with me, and she didn't like that because the air conditioning, which I thought was a luxury when you're in a place, in a country where it's 110 degrees and 110% humidity. But air conditioning gave her headaches. But I was constantly looking at her and was so sad for her for what she didn't have, until she looked at me on that trip, and she looked at me and she said, "I'm so sad for you." And I asked her, "Why are you sad for me?" And she asked me, "But who brushes your hair? I was stunned. I had no idea. I had no idea what she was talking about. We were in Cambodia, and to this day, and so at the time, we wore hair very long. And she proceeded to tell me that when my cousin and their friends, when they go to the river to wash their clothes, to bathe, to hang out, they would sit with their feet in the river, in the coolness of the river. They would shower without shampoo and soap, and then they would take the time. Sometimes they would have comb to brush each other's hair out, and other times they didn't, and they would just finger comb each other's hair out. And in these moments, they shared, they loved, they laughed. And she just thought it was so sad that I didn't have somebody to do this for me. And I told her, we have in America these things called hair conditioner, that you spritz it on and within 3 seconds your hair is done. But I've never not liked hair conditioner so much as in that moment when I had to tell my sister about that. Absolutely. So I wanted somebody to brush my hair. So now
you're just listening to you.
When I go back, my sister continued to brush my hair.
Yeah, that's lovely. I mean, it really does speak to those really special moments that we've missed so much. Do you think there are ways to get that back? Like, do you notice in your own life that you're starting to reconnect with people in different ways and feel that you're getting the 5 minutes back that you lost in your daily life?
Finally, I feel we are now safe enough, and I'm vaccinated, I'm boosted, and so I'm still careful, but I had been so isolated the last few years because I wanted to keep my siblings and who have health issues, and my in-laws who are elder in age. I wanted to keep them safe, but I was desperate for connections. I was desperate to meet people, to spend time, to go to happy hours, and I am now that person. When you see me at the library, I will say hi to you. When you see me walking by you at a mall, I will wave. I am so happy to have this connection, and I also just returned from a trip in February to Cambodia, and now I'm having longer connections, deeper connections. And going back to Cambodia, I am more grateful than ever to be there, to witness the kindness, to walk the land and experience the life, and to fully be present. I was separate from my sister for 15 years. And when I went back, I remember the joy of the reunion. I remember the first time our hands clasped again. I remember her coming up to me and saying, "You are my sister." And then 1995 to 2020 happened, and I went back to Cambodia over and over and over again, and I forgot that. Going back to Cambodia this time, I remember again the pure joy of being fully present on my travel, being with my sister, walking Cambodia's land, eating Cambodia's food. And I was fully present because there's a part of me that is fearful that what if something happened again? What if we can't make it back? And so now I am reminded again to be fully grateful and to be fully present wherever I am in the world.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I'm sure many of the women listening to you are, if they haven't already traveled, they're that moment of anticipation is just so great when you step outside where you've been for the last 2 years and feel reconnected again. I wanted to go back to just this, your trip that you just mentioned. And I know that was a really hard trip for you because you were saying goodbye to your brother as well. Can you share a bit of that with us too?
My brother Coy passed away in December of 2021, and after the Khmer Rouge ended, the Khmer Rouge War ended, 5 siblings survived, and we've always felt that there was just the 5 of us. We talked, we were together, we were just so bonded in so many ways, and he passed away suddenly it was cancer, but by the time it was diagnosed, it came very sudden, and he was 60 years old. My brother lived life like a tiger. We everybody who knew him and loved him said that about him. He lived life with the spirit of a tiger. In Cambodia, there's a word called klahan, which is tiger heart. And that was him. And so he got a lot out of his 60 years of life. And as heartbroken as I was, I understand that. And yet, I think it was even more difficult for me in some way to know that my sister lost the person she grew up with her whole entire life. When we left, when my brothers and I left, my sister and my brother Koi it was just the two of them always. They were two peas in a pod. And then she felt so alone that I wanted to go back to be with my sister. I wanted to go back to my brother's funeral service, just to be there with my sister, to stand next to her, to be by her side. I did not want her to be alone. And I knew she felt really alone, and it was so wonderful to be there in the midst of the difficulties. We were together again. We were together I was with her when we lost our parents, and it was just so meaningful to be with her again, to honor my brother's life. We never got the chance to do that together when he was alive, because we were separate for 2 years because of the pandemic. But so for me, it was very meaningful, and I'm so grateful to be able to go back.
Oh my goodness. I don't know how you do it. You're just amazing. I want to let people know we're going to take questions in just a moment. If you have questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to put those in the chat. And I know also I want to just talk to you about peace. You feel very strongly about peace, and from the work that you've done over your career and obviously your history. What does peace mean to you, and what does it mean in the current context of today?
Peace, whether it is in your heart, in your home, in your in our community, in our world, at our school, in Ukraine, in Bosnia, in Rwanda, in Cambodia, peace for me is not something we wish for and expect to be granted. Peace is not a dream we hope will be gifted to us by some angels. Peace is not something we expect human rights activists, people who work in all these programs helping people to survive their wars. Peace is not something we expect other people to deliver and to work for on our behalf. Peace is an action, or rather many, many actions. And it's actions that we need to commit to dedicate, to strategize, to choose on a daily basis. When we wake up in the morning, we take that next breath. Choose peace. When we get in a car and we drive, choose peace. When we watch the news and we read and hear about people who've been hurt and harmed, choose peace and act out on it. Help assist other people so that they might not just survive their wars, but to thrive in peace. I believe very, very strongly that whether we are doctors or lawyers or writers or students, whatever our capabilities or abilities, talents or time, whatever we have, we cannot wait to choose peace. We must choose peace now. We must choose it within our abilities. We must choose to give it and work on it. And together, when we do this, we absolutely can create change in our world. It will take time, and it's not sometimes the global world that we will change, but the world of some little girl just like me when I first came to America. And I'm so grateful all these people, the people from the Holy Family Church, all the parishioners in Essex Junction, Vermont, who brought my family and I, who chose peace, who showed up to walk me to school, who showed us how to shop food at the grocery store, who showed us how to walk and how to cross the street in these trafficked areas of not very crowded Vermont. All these people affected my life and shown me what peace looked like. And as a result of that, though I've seen the worst of man's inhumanity to man at a very young age, I was also shown the finest examples of man's humanity to man.
And you're right, it's a choice we can make, and we can choose. We have a choice in these things and the things that we can do. So I love your stories. It's beautiful. I could listen to you all night. I think I'd rather just listen to you than hear me ask questions. But we do have a few questions I just want to take from the comments. And one of them is, where are you? Because I think people are curious where you're at. So do you want to tell us where you are sitting at this moment?
I am sitting in my home in Cleveland, Ohio. And I am in Cleveland because my husband was born and raised here, and we together are partners of 3 restaurants and 2 microbreweries. And so we now, in addition to writing, I work in a restaurant, and we make food and we make beers and we make people happy.
Well, there are quite a few comments here saying that you radiate love and kindness and joy. So you are truly remarkable and inspiration. You radiate love and kindness. It's beautiful. There's a question: what helped you transform your anger to your current perspective? Was it writing? Was it mindset? How did you make that transition?
For me, then I think just being shown, number one, being shown examples of kindness and grace and generosity and compassion. That before I could even start the work of healing myself and healing my own wounded heart, I needed to see examples that there's goodness in the world, that there is light. And I believe Edith Wharton wrote a quote that said, in this world, you can spread light by either being a candle or being a mirror. And I love that. So many people have been both the candles and the mirrors to me. And that's what I've learned from people who came and supported my family and I, because we wouldn't be here without them. No one in our world get anywhere alone. We need each other. With that said, after I was given hope, I was shown beauty, I was shown grace, I now had to do the difficult work of healing my own scarred heart. And that for me was writing, was very therapeutic, because the war existed in my head above me like a big black cloud and stormy clouds. And I also visualized the cloud as thundering and scary. And then every once in a while, it would just get so much and it would just produce storms and lightnings, and it would just trigger and it would rain on me and it would attack me. And with my writing, I could take my pen and pierce a hole into the clouds and pull out of it one story thread at a time, and make it manageable for me. Because I couldn't deal with it all at once. But if I could pull one story at a time and then name the things that scared me, and then manage the trauma, one trauma at a time, that was the therapeutic work of writing for me. But once, and for all of us, different. For some of us, it may be writing, it may be singing, it may be dancing, it may be baking, it may be knitting. We all have different ways of going inside, internally reflect, and being introspective to heal our inner wounds. But hopefully we are in a place where we've done enough of this. We reach the next step, which is to ask the question, now what? Now what? What do you do with this? Where do you go? How do you take what is yours and connect to the world? How do you take the pain and make and assist other people, maybe a little bit or a lot? And for me, the answer to the now what question is to take what I've learned and to go wide. You go deep and then you go wide. Connect through love, you connect through activism, you connect through kindness, you connect through travels. When somebody says hello to you, you turn and you say hello back with a smile. When someone greet you, you learn that culture and you greet them back in kind. These are all various different ways that we can connect to one another, because only through connections will we be able truly to understand each other. And then hopefully we can be friends and not want to harm each other.
Beautiful. Well said. There's a question here about when you came to the US, were you adopted or placed with a foster family?
I came to the US when I was 10 years old, and I came with my brother who was 21 and his sister and his wife. So they were my legal guardians, and then they raised me until I was 18 and became my own legal guardian, and have been ever since.
There's this is kind of a strange question, but do you still have traumatic memories, or have you been able to overcome that, or how do you handle those things when they come up, and maybe advice for others that might have been through that?
I believe very strongly that there are things in life that some of us, maybe even many of us, may truly never heal from. But that's okay. Just because there are things that you may not ever be able to heal from completely, truly, wholly, does not mean that your life is any less full, any less vibrant, any less authentically true to you.
Yeah.
I share this example because a couple years ago, I hurt my neck. And this is a physical example. I hurt my neck skiing, and I ended up compressing my C2 and C3 in my neck. That made traveling difficult for me. But I adapted. I continued to travel, only now I travel with my own pillow. I got a Tempur-Pedic travel pillow that I put in the zip, in the bag that you squeeze out all the air so it becomes very small. I also can no longer go for long bike rides because my neck bothers me. But my husband, we ride our tandem bikes. So it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to be with someone else when you need the help, to accept that. And for me, there are many things in life. I also don't have children, and it's by choice. Part of the reason I don't have children is because my trauma was so deep that whenever I think about having children, and should something happen to the child, I don't know if I could get over that.
Yeah.
I admire mothers. I admired my friends, my neighbors and community members who are wonderful mothers. And I see how strong they are. And I worked for 3 years in a domestic violence shelter where I was witness to beautiful women and mothers who had to do what they needed to do. And sometimes that meant sending their children away so that they could survive, so they could be safe. And I admire that so tremendously, but there's a pain and a fear in my heart. But that's okay. I'm an awesome aunt. I've taken it upon myself to be the aunt that will spoil all the kids, show them a good time, be fun with them. And I revel in my role as an aunt. And if this is the one thing that I never fully truly heal, I still have lived a really full life. And that is okay.
There's a woman asking about the movie. She didn't see it. And what your number one key message might be from that movie for those who haven't seen it. And of course, we'll be watching it after this, I'm sure. But what's the one message you wanted to send with that book, with that movie?
For me, it's with my book and with the movie, was what I wanted to say as a writer was that when we watch the news and we hear stories, and until you travel and you hear lives and you hear deep history, world history are shown or given to us in 2 sentences. Sometimes in the radio, it's a couple of minutes. And sometimes in the international world news section, it's 2 or 3 sentences. What I wanted to tell people was that when you are going through trauma, whatever it be, whether it's war in the home, domestic war in your homes or in our communities or in your world or in your country, that it takes work to survive.
Yeah.
It wasn't as easy as I survived it. I wanted people to know of the strategies, of the commitment, of the daily work it took to lie, to remember, to find food, to cry, to stay strong, to take that next breath. And when you want to give up, you just tell yourself you just got to take that next breath and then that next breath.
Yeah. I
really want as a writer so that when we realize this, we will understand more of each other's stories. We understand more of what we, all of us, have had to go through to be where we are. Whether it is from getting over a divorce, or whether it is having to go to college, or whether it is to be the first girl in your community or in your family to go to high school, to go to college, to find work, how much we've had to do, the steps we've had to take to be where we are today. And I wanted to do that with the movies. And I also wanted to show a story about love, about family. Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge leader, said something that I will never forget. I'm paraphrasing his words. When he died in 1998, the news media replayed the last interview he did often. In this interview, he said something similar to this. Everything I did in Cambodia, I did for love. Love does not a genocide make. Love does not commit mass murders. Love does not create 20,000 mass graves in a country the size of the state of Oklahoma. Love does not harm, torture, tear children away from parents. And so with my movies and with my books, I wanted to show the world what real love looks like. The love of mother and fathers and sisters and brothers, the love of country and history. I wanted to show people what real love, as everybody who's here tonight joining us, what we know. True love does not hurt or harm, but true love elevates and celebrates. And that was the gist of what I wanted to say.
Oh, wow. Beautiful. We've just got a few minutes left. I could listen to you all night, I think. You're just an inspiration, really. There was a question, of course, about Angelina Jolie and what it was like to work with her. And I know you're very good friends as well. But maybe go back to how you met each other quickly, and then what it was like to work with her, because
Angie and I met close to 20 years ago when my first book, First They Killed My Father, came out, and she was at the time, I believe, in Cambodia, filming the movie Tomb Raiders, and this was before she became uber famous. And she had picked up my book from a street vendor kid and read the book and then called me up. She still to this day, I think, owes me a couple of dollars in royalty, but we're very good friends, and I love her. She is a woman whose integrity, whose heart as a woman, whose work as a humanitarian, whose love as a mother, and whose a belief in our ability to make a difference in our world and our power to be able to affect change in our world is unparalleled. And for me, it makes her a very special woman. And we had a wonderful time making films together, and we're actually really good friends. It's true.
That's lovely. I know we're going to see each other in a few months in October in California at our retreat. Do you want to give folks a little? This has been a little taste of what you're going to talk about. We are going to be talking about action, right, at the retreat. You're our closing keynote.
Yes. Well, I hope to see everyone there. I'm very, very excited, and it is the topic of my the talk is going to be a call to action, and we have been sharing a little bit of philosophy, but when I see you in Sacramento, I'm going to put more of the actual details and very specific ways we can all incorporate a call to actions in our own life, in our own community, in our world when we travel, and all the things that will make our life much richer and much more vibrant and fun.
And also, as you say, we as women have power, and not only do we have power, we have immense power in travel and the ability to make a difference when we go back out into the world and do things differently. And all the values that you're talking about tonight, kindness, love, generosity, gratitude, these are things I believe exist in every journeywoman. And as we go back into the world, we can be role models for others and demonstrate those values when we travel. Even the very simple things, as you said, saying hello to somebody, and or volunteering, or making a donation, or even simple things we can do when we travel. Okay, well, we've come to the end of our time together, unless there are any other questions that you all have. Loung and I would love to talk about menopause too, but we probably don't have time to talk about that tonight. But it's just been a joy speaking with you. Thank you so much for making time, and I can't wait to meet you in a few months. It's going to be an amazing 5 days in California, along with all the other wonderful women.
Thank you so much for all your work creating JourneyWoman, and for putting together this wonderful conference in Sacramento, and the facilities, the people that you're bringing in together, the topics of all the speeches just sound so terrific. I know I'm going to learn a lot. I know I'm going to get so much out of it from the other speakers and from being together. And I'm very, very excited to join you, and hope that everybody else will join us as well.
So do I. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for joining.